As the #1 selling walk-in tub in North America, Safe Step walk-in tubs are built to maximize your safety and comfort. Each tub comes standard with a dual hydrotherapy system, so you can enjoy the luxuries of bathing comfortably at home. Soothing jets increase mobility and ease pain, while the rainfall shower head refreshes you from head to toe. Visit SafeStepTub.com today to request your free quote and ask about our special offers.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris
Hearing
Dowhouse,
about these are pointless in fantasy in the sense.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome back in to Operation Domination, available to you on all of your favorite podcast apps. And of course, make sure you check out and subscribe to the Fantasy Football Advice YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, back for my week hiatus, where the men to my right did a wonderful job filling in for that episode last week when we talked about the rebuild edition of Dynasty. Great show, gents. Don't worry, I was watching, editing after the fact. We got Chase Thornton, Adam LaRue, and Chris D in the building. Before we get started, though, we got to get a big shout out to a new sponsor of ours called Drafters. If you're ready to draft and chill all season long, well, guess what? Best ball is the way to go. On at Drafters Fantasy, it means no lineups, no stress. Just draft once and watch the points stack. You can use the promo code FSAN for a 100% deposit match up to $100 on your first deposit. You need a minimum of 20, but that's FSAN promo code for up to $100 match on your very first deposit. Just go to drafters.com and make sure you put the promo code FSAN in. We are drafting like crazy from that platform right now. So get it in for best ball. It's the most accurate ADP. If you just want to get ready for redraft leagues, that's pretty much the way to go. But today, we're going to be talking about our potential position battles going around the NFL and how that might affect your dynasty leagues. Because today might be our last dynasty episode as we transition next week into getting us ready for the upcoming 2025 season. So, Adam, you put this together, put your heart and soul in this thing amidst the move and everything else. And I don't know how you did it, but walk us through. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, so part of it was, candidly, the move kind of made things a little chaotic on getting the outline to the guys over here. But I did want today to be a good day for some just open topics for the guys to talk about a little bit, just have some good conversations. So I just put together a good list of some of the most relevant, at least in my mind, position battles going into this season. And I wanted to ask guys, first of all, does this matter for Dynasty? Is there any real impact? Does this change how you're evaluating any of the players involved? And then, if so, let's dig into it and see what people think. What are the pieces that move? What are the pieces that don't? We're trying to separate the noise from things that actually matter and can actually win or lose you your league. So we're going to jump into it and use this first one as an example here. And that's the Steelers quarterback battle with the Aaron Rodgers will they, won't they kind of in the background. And I think this is a good one to start out with because, well, like realistically, let's talk about it. Obviously, we're all going to say like on the field, Aaron Rodgers would be a lot better than a Will Howard or a Mason Rudolph, regardless of what Aaron Rodgers has left. I think we're on the same page there. But for Dynasty, does it matter that much? Because I don't think we're targeting the Steelers wide receiver 2 that much. The running back is going to be a volume play. DK Metcalf's a volume play. So at a certain point, like the guys that we're targeting here, we're, at least in my opinion, and we've talked about it a little bit this offseason already, these aren't players that we're necessarily targeting for upside. We're targeting for volume. So if that's the case, then how much does it matter? So I'm curious to you guys, are you guys really tuned into this QB battle? And again, with the Aaron Rodgers thing looming as well, are you tuned in? Does this matter for Dynasty? Or is it something that, well, I'd rather it be Rodgers than anyone else, but it doesn't change the on-paper rankings all that much.
2 points for the dynasty relevance here in this camp battle. One, in my opinion, if Aaron Rodgers signs, from a dynasty perspective, this will be your absolute last chance to offload him and get anything back in return for him, because he is 432 years old and he is in that stage of his career, the Brett Favre will he won't he stage. He learned well from his mentor. So if he signs, yes, all of their receivers are more fantasy relevant, in my opinion, for this year. But this will be your last opportunity to offload Aaron Rodgers. And two, kind of piggybacking off that, if Rodgers does not sign, this might have been the best opportunity in the entire league for Will Howard to walk in the door and actually compete for the job, short of going to Cleveland, but they already had 37 different dudes in the room. So in terms of the dynasty relevance, yeah, I think it's irrelevant. It's something I'll be watching and keeping an eye on, because like I said, it's your last chance. It will be, if he signs, your last chance to get rid of Rodgers. But then also, I mean, does Mason Rudolph, show us anything more than I think we already all know about him? I doubt it. Can Will Howard step in and actually, perform like his fans think he can? And I know a lot of us weren't really thrilled with him, but he did lead a national championship caliber team at Ohio State. He played big time football there, and he's got the physical tools to at least be in the league. So I will be watching this battle.
I mean, for dynasty purposes, no. We're going to talk about a lot of this, I think, as we get closer to the season for this season. And that's assuming, Aaron Rodgers actually signs here. Otherwise, it might not even be relevant for 2025. You just might want to put a big X around the Steeler players. But I don't think any way you slice it, even if Rodgers signs, you're not looking at the future quarterback in the Pittsburgh backfield. I think they're going to be drafting somebody else next year. That would be my prediction. So if you have DK Metcalf, you have Caleb Johnson, who the quarterback is this year is kind of irrelevant for the long term. And you already know you're going to be, at least with those guys, holding on to a volume-based floor without a ton of upside. I don't think this is crazy relevant for dynasty purposes. Something I'm sure we're going to talk about again soon. I don't know. Chris, what do you got?
Yeah, for me, I think it is irrelevant. I'm more with Chase in the sense of, look, if you're a contender, you're going to care about what two quarterback positions are starting, especially during Superflex. You want to have some options to have as a lineup, even just for a year. And then talking about some other players on the lineup, I think when you look at upside guys, if you're a rebuild guy, you're looking to try to look at what that second receiver is going to wind up being. Is it going to be Roman Wilson? Is it going to be Austin? So you want to buy low on some of those guys, because with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback, the second receiver can actually eat. I'd be feeling a lot different if Mason Rudolph is the quarterback receiver eating as well, because that's something that we haven't really seen. We saw Tennessee last year that prime receiver gets targets, that second receiver didn't necessarily get the targets. So I think Mason Rudolph's a guy that I'm not necessarily super excited about, or Aaron Rodgers is a guy I'm super excited about either. I don't think Will Howard really plays into the equation one way or another, in a sense where I think he just gets responsible in the field if the Pittsburgh Steelers wind up stinking this year. So I think that one way or another, whoever quarterback is, he's going to be just the same value to me. But I do think some of those other guys, the quarterback position, and like I said, the second receiver position could be a lot different looking forward to dynasty.
I think it's relevant, but I don't think it's by a lot. It's something that you watch, but to me, realistically, especially if Roman Wilson gets the second job, I agree that I think that's potentially the biggest development or change for someone's potential ranking. But like DK, for example, I think you're talking from a mid to low end wide receiver 2 with Rodgers. With the other guys, like the volume's going to be there regardless. He's going to stay at 3 at worst, a high 3 probably at worst.
Adam, real quick to that, do you think the volume won't change? I mean, look at the Jets receivers. While they weren't super inefficient, they got a lot of targets. And the one thing Arthur Smith's been known to do is not throw the ball, but we know Aaron Rodgers does prefer to throw the ball. So I think that's a huge impact what happens to those receivers and how many of these guys can eat.
Yeah, I think it'd be only one receiver that has any relevance at all with anyone other than Rodgers. But I think that one guy will get enough, because I think he's the only guy that matters. That's how I see it. Look, there's some other fringe guys, like tight end positions only relevant with Rodgers, but again, even then, it's like a fringe starter. So maybe some weeks where you can play him, but not quite, a regular thing. I just think a lot of these guys, kind of regardless, aren't necessarily your key pieces. Roman Wilson's an interesting one, though, because I think as a wide receiver, too, he could sneak some at least weeks for you with Rodgers, and otherwise I think he's about worthless. So that's a big one and definitely worth talking about. Anything else on the Steelers quarterbacks?
No, I think we can move on.
All right, cool. Then on to the Texans wide receiver 2. So this is our 1v1v1 over here with the our two teammates in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll, and Christian Kirk, all kind of duking it out for the spot behind the spot behind Nico Collins. And this is all, of course, with Tank Dell being hurt. Who could, potentially figure in at some point, depending on his health. So this is one we've seen this second receiver eat for this team. We've, as far as seen the third receiver eat. So how this shakes out between a lot of talent in this group, there's definitely, at least in my opinion, some interest here. But again, I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say and kind of what you guys think will shake out here.
Well, I'll jump in real quick.
Go ahead, Chris. Go.
I was going to say real quick, I think if you're a Christian Kirk owner, that's the only reason you would care about this. Outside of that, the rest of the guys' value don't change to me. They were drafted. They're going to have value at some point, whether the second guy or the third guy. You're going to see that unfold throughout the season. This camp battle is not going to mean a whole lot to me.
No, Chris, I was just going to kind of echo your sentiment there. This isn't a battle for wide receiver 2. If anything, it's a battle for who's that slot receiver to be the wide receiver 3 between Jalen Knoll and Christian Kirk. I mean, remember, we're now 2 years removed from Kirk really being fantasy relevant, 2 years removed from him being able to play a healthy season. And when he did, he was, line up 76% of the time in the slot. Like this is, and I think at some point this season, maybe it's not September, but we probably see Jalen Knoll take over. He did get drafted in the 3rd round. We know he has that ability to do so. He's one of my favorite route runners in this draft class. And I think he's got some untapped yards after catch ability that we might see come to fruition in the NFL, given his build. But Jaden Higgins is unquestioned the wide receiver 2 here in this group. He is the perimeter guy. They do have Nick Caley, the offensive coordinator. He's the pass game coordinator for the Rams the previous season. So we can expect to see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. But there's nobody who's going to be supplanting Higgins for that second receiver role. So this is Nico. This is Higgins. And then if we're in September, probably see Kirk at some point. I think by November, you're going to wind up seeing Jalen Knoll. That's kind of how I see the breakdown. I don't know how much of a battle, to Chris's point, it's going to really wind up being. It's dynasty relevant, though. I mean, you got 2 young guys in Higgins and Knoll with CJ Stroud. Like, it's all a young core, and Nico Collins is locked in. Like, if this offense can get any kind of blocking from their line at all, we could see this Houston Texans offense pop, with these weapons around them. So it's definitely relevant as far as how those targets shake down, how aggressive are they going to be, how pass heavy will they be. But I don't think it's a position battle.
Yeah, I guess I mean more so like who establishes themselves as the target to at wide receiver, not necessarily the flanker receiver. It's certainly possible that the slot guy out targets Jaden Higgins. Obviously, you guys know my opinion, and that I don't think that'll happen. But it's certainly like there's offenses, especially to your point, coming from the Rams system. The Rams have had the slot receiver out target some of the outside guys before. So I think that's more where I'm coming from with this one. Chase, do you have any
I don't know, Chase. Do you think Jalen Knoll will out target Jaden Higgins?
I don't know that Jalen Knoll out targets him. I think that the slot position is one that they like, that CJ Stroud likes to throw to on this team, and I think they want a good, strong player there. Is why they were so happy to have Tank Dell. Even I know that it was a different offensive mindset 2-3 years ago, but. I think that's what is worth looking at here, because it's going to be obviously Collins on the outside and Higgins on the outside. So you're looking at who's going to play that slot role. If Knoll can take it over from whomever else might be on the roster right now that they're going to allow to compete for that. But it is a good, there are the bones here for a good to very good passing offense. And so I think whoever does end up in that slot role is going to have some nice value. I mean, they still have Dalton Schultz there too, but you can do a lot with 3 guys on the field and 3 wide receivers on the field and a tight end there. Giving CJ Stroud some options there. Like you said, if their line blocks at all, this could be a fun offense to watch. But yeah, dynasty wise, obviously it's all about the two young guys, their development this year. How do they come out? I think there's no question though that Higgins is on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. It's just, can Noel, seize the opportunity, with Tank Dell out and with the other various guys that we've all been waiting on over there. Christian Kirk, I mean, yeah, he's kind of nearing the end of when you want to be holding on to him dynasty wise anyway. So yeah, it's the Kirk Noel battle for me. That's the one to watch. And I'm hoping for the Noel victory there because I've already got him in a couple of dynasty drafts. So let's go, Jalen.
Well, all right. I think we're fairly covered on that Texans wide receiver battle, but I think one of the ones that we've been kind of waiting on for 2 off seasons now, the Cowboys running back position. This is one that might be uglier than either of the previous 2, although the Steelers quarterback position is also an ugly one. However, running backs have inherent fantasy value, and there's certainly some money to be made in this situation between the crapshoot that is Jaden Blue, Phil Maffa, Miles Sanders, Deuce Vaughn, Javonte Williams. If you bet the right horse, you're going to make good money on this one, I think, because there's so much variety in who people prefer that none of these guys are particularly expensive. And if one of them even gets 55% of the running back volume over the season, that they're going to break positive value. So I'm curious what you guys think and what you guys are most looking forward to watching out of the Cowboys running back situation over the next 2-3 months.
I mean, I can jump in on this one. So for dynasty relevancy, it's such a weird thing because I think it's relevant for Jaden Blue. Because Javonte Williams, unless he suddenly finds what we thought we saw him coming out of college in that rookie year with that explosiveness, it just seems like it's kind of kaput for him, right? Like he'll be a volume guy. He'll be like a Jamal Williams, kind of what it reminds me of a few years ago. And the Cowboys are not going to score touchdowns the way the Detroit Lions did, which is what made Jamal Williams fantasy relevant that year. But will he soak up most of the carries? Yeah, but Jaden Blue is going to be more explosive. He's going to be more involved, I believe, at least in the passing game. He's the only running back who has a different type of skill set. That's kind of the other thing. Like Maffa and Javonte and Miles Sanders, who's been toast for forever now at this point. You're just talking about a lot of guys who are just going to maybe find 2 yards past the line of scrimmage and fall down. And I'm a big Javonte Williams guy. I never will give up totally on him, but at this point, you can't really expect too much more out of it. So it's interesting from a Jaden Blue situation. But at the same time, I don't think Jaden Blue's ever built to be the guy, right? And if he's not going to be the guy, they're going to probably, I know we said this year, they didn't do much to do it, but I got to imagine at some point they're going to address the running back position with a higher volume, caliber, talented running back. And that could be next season, potentially, where Blue might just get stuck kind of in that third down role. Full point PPR leagues, I think he's the guy who could be an RB3, maybe even half point this year, because I think he could be in a position to get a little bit more work if they have to be explosive. So I'm interested from a Jaden Blue standpoint, but maybe even from the standpoint of, we get to the season, he starts catching fire, maybe I sell him, because I don't. It screams a lot of Tyrone Tracy to me. I don't know if he'll even be as good as Tyrone Tracy was last year, but it screams a lot of Tyrone Tracy. Like, I know you're going to get somebody who's going to take away whatever your ceiling and the opportunity role is going to be.
Yeah, it's interesting with the draft capital, how that could potentially work out, right? Like we've seen a bunch with these backs that get drafted late, that there's a decent chance that they just either add someone to the backfield to share it with you or you lose it altogether. But go ahead, Chase.
Well, for all those Javonte Williams fans out there that were kind of raking me over the coals 3 years ago when I wasn't real big on him, and I know he's had injuries since then and all that, but this is it. This is the opportunity for him to show that he can be a full-fledged starting running back in this league still, or ever for that matter. But like you said, he'll have value, or whoever emerges in this backfield will have value simply by being a starting running back. But I do believe that it's going to be much more of a run pass split. I think we're going to see I think that we'll see somebody have to operate as that pure third down running back. Now, whether that's Jaden Blue, who is the youngster coming into town, or whether that's Miles Sanders, who yes, I'm not all that excited about, but he at least has shown something in the past that he can kind of do that. So yeah, and for the Javonte Williams people, owners out there, you're hoping that this is kind of like a renaissance for him, that he shows that the knee is not going to be a problem, and that, you know, for the most part, 2 years that he didn't have to shoulder the load, that he's actually younger than his 25 years would suggest here. So I'm not crazy about wanting any part of this backfield. This screams like a situation where they still could add somebody. We still do have J.K. Dobbins out there. We still do have Gus Edwards. There are still people out there they could bring in and make this just a complete full-fledged nightmare. So outside of J. Don Blue, I'm not really wanting a whole heck of a lot in this backfield from a dynasty standpoint.
Chris, we've pooped on Javonte a couple times here. We got to give you your opportunity to talk about your guy here.
Defend your boy.
Well, I mean, look, it's not even about just Javonte to me. This is one of the first actual battles I think we've actually talked about. I don't think there's really a battle going on in Pittsburgh with who shows up to actually play quarterback. I don't think really a battle for second receiver. I think that's Higgins clearly. I think he's the prototype of what they're looking for, as a second receiver. But in this situation, I think that we're going to look for is what are these guys' roles in the usage, and that does definitely have impact on all these guys. I mean, Phil Moffitt could be somebody that has value of the goal line guard. It could be unrosterable. You're going to find out pretty quickly. You're going to also have guys like Javonte Williams, who Chase alluded to, that it might be his last shot, but it's also his first shot of being healthy and being a guy who's been a starter from maybe possibly day one. We've seen, Schottenheimer use other backs situation. That you guys remember Bilal Powell. Bilal Powell was actually fantasy relevant for a period of time there because people like Schottenheimer who were figuring out how to utilize him in different roles. He wasn't necessarily the guy that was RB1 in the backfield. They used Thomas Jones, they used different guys and mixed guys in. That's kind of what they were known to do. In Seattle, it's a little bit different with more two, and they're the third down back usually as a pass catcher. We saw McIntosh, this guy they drafted out last year before he moved on. So I think when you look at it in totality, for me, it's what are the roles? And what are these guys actually kind of usage? If it's going to be, these guys are all getting kind of chance to eat, then all these guys might be roster books. To everybody's point, there's no long-term answer necessarily in the backfield, but that's also an opportunity for guys. We've seen, previous Cowboys, they'll keep rolling out Rico Dotto. They'll keep rolling out Malik Davis. They'll keep rolling out people because they're familiar with the system. They've been around, and Jerry doesn't move on real easily. I think Jaden Blue is the easy guy to kind of target all of them because he's going to have value regardless. He's the newest toy in a sense. He got drafted by this coaching staff. They targeted him specifically for his skill set to be able to use out of the backfield as a receiver. He kind of profiles a lot like Tony Pollard in a lot of ways as well. So I think he's going to have a role for this Cowboy team. It's the other guys I think are going to be kind of key. How much value do they have? And, Javonte could be somebody that could want to be an RB3 on your bench or a flex option, but it's still nice to have.
Rico Dowdle was roster filler for several years, but because of how the Cowboys use their running backs, he became fantasy relevant when he finally got the job. That's the hope for anybody out there who's looking at Phil Moffitt.
But the point to that is you would have wished you'd sold Rico Dowdle while you had the chance. And
Exactly.
That's kind of the point I'm making with Jadon Blue. Like, I might sell him if he doesn't.
I agree completely. If you get bail. Yeah.
More my thing is like you're talking about the camp battle aspect. That down the road, it definitely, debate these guys' value. But I think camp battle wise, going into this, that's the, I want to see these guys' roles.
Well, and to that point, like, yes, you do want to sell him, but that's still dynasty relevant in the sense that, like, hey, that's a second round pick you can potentially get for nothing right now. Like, it's kind of like what I talked about with Tyler Shuck when I drafted him in the mock draft episode. It's not about that I think he's going to be a great quarterback. It's that if you give me a quarterback in the third round that I think is going to start, then that almost always ends up being a profit, right? Like I'm not keeping him. I'm selling him to you when you need a quarterback 6 months from now. Like,
not just in the mock draft, but he did in a real dynasty league too. So Adam put his money where his mouth is with that one. Don't back down.
That I did. But yeah, no, you get a starting running back for next to nothing right now. 3 months from now, you sell him for a second. That's really big for your team if you're able to do that.
And then you trust the process.
Well, part of trusting the process is that right now on the FSAN, that's the Fantasy Sports Advice Network shop, you can get the most complete rookie guide you're ever going to find for just $5. So when you go to fsan.shop.com, just look for the Fantasy Football Advice Network 2025 rookie guide, $5. complete with profiles and stats and everything you'll need for a full breakdown for your Dynasty Leagues for these rookie guys right now. Speaking of Jadon Blue. So make sure you guys go ahead and check that out at the Fantasy Sports Advice Shop. Got at him.
Well. All right, so let's talk about some of our own teams really quick. And Chase, we're going to start it off with you. We're going to have some fun with your wide receiver situation, but then we'll come back around and make fun of my quarterback situation. So it'll be all okay. We're going to start off with the Packers cluster that we have at wide receivers. So that would be Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Tavian Wicks, Savion Williams, and we've even seen some moonlighting from the likes of Bo Melton and the ever-present Mecole Hardman. So we've got plenty of names to talk about with this group. And the question is, what do you make of it? Because, again, like similar to some of these other ones, we've seen one, maybe two of the Packers wide receivers at a time with Jordan Love at quarterback be relevant. But it's really hard to figure out who they're going to be right now. And it was like that the last two seasons, and it's just getting harder because they keep adding more guys. So
Yeah, no,
help me figure this one out, first of all. And guys, like, is this relevant, or they just keep adding guys? We know they're going to add guys. We know they're going to use all of them, so you just give up and don't care anymore.
Dynasty relevant in terms of, there's a lot of youth. Even the guys who are veterans on this roster and are leading this receiver room, for the most part, they're young enough guys. They're going to be getting jobs either re-signing in Green Bay or going elsewhere. First off, Mecole Hardman in Dynasty, unless you're in a league that counts special teams,
25-man league.
Yeah, something like that. Let's forget about Mecole Hardman. He's a Packer now. Love him. Sure, his mother thinks he's a great person, but I'm not into him for Dynasty.
I love how Adam just threw him in there too. Like that was something like just slip his name in just cause.
Mecole Hardman is still on an NFL roster, if you weren't aware. He's going to be a return guy.
Name for us to talk about in this show.
Yeah.
So he's there.
He's going to be a return guy anyway. He's going to take over because Keyshawn Nixon only wants to play defense now. In terms of their receiver core, listen, Romeo Doubs, if he's healthy, has to be on the field. He's one of the better. He's one of the guys that is a starting caliber receiver for them. I think. Everybody jokes, they've got a really deep receiver room. Yeah, they've got a lot of guys who are 3s, 2s at best. I'm not necessarily overly convinced that Matthew Golden is a number 1. But he's looked good so far in underwear and, big puffy hats. And he does have potential. He's got a ton of potential. We don't know. Maybe he grows and Jordan Love falls in love with him. I think in 3 wide receiver sets, it's definitely got to be Doubs. It's got to be Jaden Reed coming out of the slot. And I think and then you put Golden on the outside, I think, in that flanker role, in my opinion. I do like Savion Williams in terms of a lottery pick because you don't have to worry about him. He's going undrafted in 12-team leagues in some cases. He's going late in the 4th round. Otherwise, Savion Williams, if they end up using him as a gimmick gadget type player, great. If not, he's still 6'4". I don't know if you gimmick gadget a guy that's 6'4" or not, or if you just stick him on the outside and throw the ball up for him every once in a while. So he's worth a flyer at his current cost. So I think there is dynasty relevance there. Matthew Golden, obviously, with 1st-round draft capital, he's a 1st-round pick right now in dynasty, or late 1st, early 2nd at the most, depending on what your format is. There's definitely something there because he's young enough and he's talented enough. How the rest of that roster shakes out, I think you're looking at a bunch of guys who are kind of just guys. Even Doubs, I like Doubs. I've got him on a bunch of dynasty rosters, but at the end of the day, he's just a dude. He's eminently replaceable NFL-wise and dynasty-wise. So Romeo Doubs, don't worry about him much. Christian Watson, I love the fact that he's 8 foot tall and he's got 4.3 speed, but that's only when he's healthy, and he's only healthy for like a very short window every new moon or so. So you can't really count on Christian Watson. Plus, we know he's going to be out for part of this year. Dynasty-wise, Golden is the one to own. I'm not above taking a flyer on Savion Williams just because he's so cheap. You can either get him as a waiver pickup or late in your draft. But ultimately, from a fantasy relevancy standpoint, especially for this season, it's another case of I'm fine with having the guy that wants to throw them the ball. I don't necessarily want to gauge week to week who's going to have to be the top target. And going forward with all the uncertainty on this roster, there's a lot of playable guys, but not a lot of guys that I want to buy into long-term because I don't know what their situation is going to be this season and forward.
Well, before I hand it off to Dan and Chris, I got to say, like, part of what makes the Packers wide receiver situation so bizarre is that normally we all talk about the situations where you don't know, like, who's going to be the guy. Like, that's where you're taking your shots because nobody knows. And if you hit, you're the one that wins. But the only thing we do know with the Packers is that we've gone 2 years now with the same situation and it's never resolved itself. But, like, normally there's, like, these ambiguous battles. There's money to be had, and this one, it just hasn't seemed to ever come to fruition. So that's why it becomes the yearly question, right? But go ahead.
And it's a perfect situation. Like, it would be a perfect situation in, like, say, best ball, because you wouldn't have to worry if you could just get the guy and just, hey, great. If he goes off this week, I get him. But the problem is the price that they cost in just about every format, including Dynasty, including if you still want to trade for Jayden Reed. The cost that you have to bring them in for with the uncertainty, I'm not overly comfortable with it. So even as a Packer fan, it pains me to say that I'm just not really fully ready to dive in on any of these guys, golden or otherwise, from a Dynasty standpoint.
And if you're playing best ball, make sure you do it at drafters.com, FSAN promo code. Just want to throw that in
Ching.
there. Go ahead, Chris. Why don't you take this one?
Yeah, I mean, for myself, this isn't really a dynasty battle or a dynasty equation. That doesn't change anybody's value for me. I don't know if we're going to be able to determine from OTAs who's going to be that leading receiver for the Green Bay Packers moving forward. I don't really think it changes the values of different guys, as Chase alluded to. Some of the younger guys, whether they get traded or not or moved on, that's the only really impact you're going to see from this battle, quote unquote, in my opinion. But even then, these guys are still going to have equivalent to value. I mean, to me, if you have the opportunity to Wicks, he gets picked up by somebody, you're still going to probably value him about the same. Romeo Dobbs moves on. I think he's the guy that I like the most in this receiving core, but he's also the guy in last year was contract at this receiving core, and there's a good chance he's been rumored to be moved, even possibly cut by some insiders from Green Bay. So there's a lot of talk about him, but even if he goes somewhere else, Romeo Dobbs is still going to be valuable to you. He's not really going to change. So to me, this doesn't really have any battle impact or dynasty impact for any guy I value in this equation.
Well, I think I disagree with that in the sense of, I mean, look, it's going to have to see how we play out during the season, right? But as far as the position battle goes, it comes down, can Matthew Golden do anything like Christian Watson as far as big plays and touchdowns? Because that's the fantasy impact there. It wasn't consistent necessarily from a week to week, and I think this is a super spreader offense, and I don't know if any wide receiver in this offense is ever going to show us that he can get 24+% of the target share week in and week out. I mean, Jayden Reed's been stuck at 17% the last 2 years. Romeo Dobbs has never topped 19% since becoming a Green Bay Packer. I mean, you're talking at that point, you're talking low-end wide receiver 3 target shares with Jayden Reed. The X factor, of course, comes in that he's giving you something in the rushing as far as a gadget player. But as we saw, because he's not Deebo Samuel, that's not a consistent thing all year long. And that's why after week 9 of last season, when they came out of the bye, you didn't even want to play Jayden Reed in your fantasy league anyway. Sorry, a frog stuck in my throat there real quick.
Stay with us, Dan. Stay with us.
So can Matthew Golden be the big play threat? Can he be the red zone threat? That's going to dictate whether he can be a low-end wide receiver too. I think he's got the most potential for that given his skill set and what they're going to ask his role to be. Because I think Dobbs is locked into his flanker perimeter receiver position. I think Jayden Reed's locked into his slot gadget type of role. So from a dynasty point, if he can do that, he'll boom through the roof. He'll be worth the first round by the time this is all said and done, if he can do that.
But how would you do that through it?
I just want to say, like, literally, if we can stay with us, Dan. Stay with it. We love you, buddy. Come on. Literally every guy on this Packers offensive roster is a classic case, in my opinion, of a guy you would much rather have on your real life football team than anywhere near your fantasy roster, whether it's Dynasty, Redraft, Best Ball, Daily. Every single guy on this roster is a guy I would rather have on my real football team, and I do, thank you. But I don't want necessarily a whole lot to do with them from a dynasty standpoint because there's just so much inconsistency and so many questions here. And I think there will continue to be going forward. I still don't see that number one clear-cut option there.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, we've had our fun with your team. Now to have some fun with mine, the QB battle between the likes of Jason Bean, Riley Leonard, I kid, Daniel Jones, and Anthony Richardson being the primary two combatants here. And this is one that I think we all agree has a lot of fantasy relevance, because if you, from a quarterback having fantasy relevance, we've seen that with Richardson be very, very relevant. And to be fair, we've seen that a few years ago with Daniel Jones as well. Let's not, be too crazy here. But for the receivers, myself included, being the Richardson, not quite defender, but wanter to be the starter on this show, it's no question the receivers are far more relevant with Daniel Jones. So this is one that I think is a pretty clear and cut case on who is more relevant in what situation. But I want to pass it to you guys. Like, what do you guys?
I'll jump in real quick on this one. Adam, as your new Colt defender, since Adam doesn't do it anymore, look, the only person that really matters, it matters in twofold to me. It matters to people about Dynasty, what happens with Daniel Jones. Can he actually be a tangible starter in this league, a guy you want to have on your Dynasty roster? We see when if he uses his legs, he can be something. As for the receivers, I think it more affects their immediate skills or immediate impact this year. And the skill set is more what I look at. Which skill set will be utilized, but more? Will it be the guys like a Pierce and a Mitchell? If you have, stocks of them on your Dynasty teams, you want Richardson to be a quarterback because we didn't see Danny Dimes be very good down the field. It's about feeding receivers. I saw neighbors get pissed off because you can get the ball. Daniel Jones going to get the ball. So I don't necessarily think the receivers are going to be thrown with any guy. It's just once we get in the ball. But I think we will see is the guys who are closer to the inside, the Josh Downs, or the closer receivers, they might benefit from Daniel Jones more so. The guy who doesn't change, I think, for either one is Warren. He's still going to be utilized regardless who the quarterback is. But I think mostly for me, this impacts Daniel Jones is mostly dynasty value. Even for Richardson, he's 23 years old, guys. Like, if he doesn't work out here, so what? He can move on to another team. He still has plenty of opportunities. There's going to be plenty of teams that will be interested in Anthony Richardson and making him a reclamation project down the road. We've seen other guys like Justin Fields get chances. We've seen Baker Mayfield get chances. We've seen Dan Darnold get chances. So Anthony Richardson, who has a lot of skill set and has a lot of things that people are kind of, quick to forget now that they did like him originally about, he still has a gun. He still is a big dude. And he did work on his craft this offseason. I think you're going to see that. So for me, like I said, the more impact of this is what happens to Daniel Jones moving forward in the NFL Dynasty owner.
Yeah, I think the key one you hit on there is, to me, just quickly, is Josh Downs. I think benefit quite a bit from Daniel Jones. But there is that other pendulum where your Alec Pierce's, your potentially Donnie Mitchell's, I think probably benefit a little bit more from Richardson. But go ahead, Dan.
No, I was going to say, this is definitely a big time battle that we're going to watch throughout the summertime. This definitely is going to matter for 2025. From taking a perspective from the Colts standpoint, like Chris to the weapons, long term, I don't think you're looking at the future quarterback on the Colts either direction as far as that goes heading into next season. I don't think either one of these guys will be the starting quarterback in 2026. As far as their players, as their value in particular, yeah, you're right. Anthony Richardson, given his physical skill set, given his age, will probably be given at least the opportunity to see if he can turn it around at some point again in his career. So he'll be worth stashing. If Daniel Jones can't give you anything this year, then I also agree with you. He's out. He's done. He's toast. He's fantasy graveyard. Goodbye. So hit on all those points. Now, I look at Richardson as a more athletic Trey Lance, where I don't think he winds up getting an opportunity to get himself either. He's just too far away from being able to be a competent quarterback that anybody's going to really trust. The one thing I'll give Fields at least is that he was able in situational to get better as far as being more conservative. We still got to see if Anthony Richardson can do at least that. And Fields is actually a better runner. Well, he's not as athletic, but he's a more efficient runner than Richardson is too. So I think that plays a big deal in giving him his second shot. So I don't know if he gets it. I'm focusing more here on the perspective from the Colts side of who's going to be the quarterback for the future. Is it on the roster? I don't think it is as far as 2026 is concerned. For this season, if I'm a wide receiver, I don't care who you are. I don't care how much you throw the deep ball. I want it to be Daniel Jones. Look, we could talk all day about Alec Pearson and Donnie Mitchell. The fact is, whether it's Jones, whether it's Richardson, it's going to be best ball purposes only, nothing else. You're never going to trust them to be in your lineup. But I could trust Josh Downs. I could, to some degree, maybe even trust Michael Pittman as a lower-end flex option if Jones is the one throwing the football versus Anthony Richardson there. I mean, let's not forget, Wan'Dale Robinson was a target monster for crying out loud with Daniel Jones.
But he didn't play him, Dan. That was my point. Like, people kept saying he was going to be a guy that they were going to utilize week in, week out, but you didn't see Daniel Jones feature him. You didn't see anybody.
We saw him feature Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors is a top 12 wide receiver. But he's a top 12 wide receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson in the weeks Daniel Jones started was wide receiver 37. Like, he had flex weeks. You could play him. He wasn't that far off. He was doing better than the Colts receivers were. And Malik Neighbors, like I said, he was a top 12 guy. So he did feature guys. He did get guys fantasy relevant.
He played the week 10?
Yeah, he played a week 10. And for first 10 weeks, who did you want in your lineup? You wanted Malik Neighbors in your lineup. And Wan'Dale Robinson was actually a guy who was at the very least on rosters, if not a spot fill-in, with the volume that he was getting for those first 10 weeks.
And Donnie Mitchell didn't do anything last year. I'm not Donnie Mitchell. I'm sorry. Pierce didn't do anything last year that you would have in your lineups at some points.
He had a couple pop games, but did you know when to play him? Did you know when those pop? No, because they were so sporadic.
Pierce is a best ball play. He's a classic best ball play. I don't want him in Dynasty. I don't want him in redraft. Here's a couple things. First off, Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes turned 28 years old yesterday. Happy birthday, Daniel Dimes. I love you. We've seen him be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL in fantasy. Just 3 seasons ago, he was quarterback 9 overall. Daniel Jones was. Anthony Richardson. Listen, yeah. Is he an NFL caliber athlete? Heck yeah. Can he run the ball all over the place? Heck yeah. Is he gigantic? Heck yeah. Can he throw the ball from Lucas Oil Stadium completely over the Ohio River? Yeah, he probably can. But Daniel Jones is the only one of the two that is an NFL caliber passer, and he is barely at that. Okay. Yes, it had the dynasty relevance here is like actually threefold. One, yeah, does Daniel Jones continue to have any value going forward? I think this is his chance to prove that he can be a viable, useful quarterback in this league. I don't think he's ever going to prove himself to be a top 16 type quarterback in the NFL, but this is his chance to prove he's one of the top 32 and deserves a job somewhere. B, Anthony Richardson, this is your absolute last opportunity to prove that you can be a quarterback in the NFL, because I agree with Dan. If Richardson can't win this job, he does not throw the ball at an NFL caliber. He does at level. He just does not. So if all he's got is rushing ability, heck, you can find that elsewhere. You could snap the ball to Christian McCaffrey if you want.
What did Josh Allen do for his first 12 games of his career?
Josh Allen, though, got
for
better.
First 12 games of his career, what did he do? Just answer that question, Timmy, and that's all I want to know.
Josh Allen got better every single year, and his accuracy improved, which is a point I will also make for Mr. Justin Fields. Justin Fields' accuracy, his completion percentage has improved all 4 years of his career. Justin Fields has worked at the craft, and Justin Fields has proved that he deserves a shot at being an NFL starting quarterback because he's shown he can actually pass the ball at an NFL level. I still haven't seen
4 years older than Anthony Richardson.
I have not seen that from Anthony Richardson. And part of it is because Anthony Richardson can't keep his broke ass off the field half the time. So if he can stay healthy and if he can show any kind of improvement pass-wise, okay, then he can maybe prove that he deserves to be on your roster. Pisses me off because I took him first overall too a couple years ago in 1 or 2 dynasty leagues. I was hoping for the rushing upside too. But if that's all he's offering anybody, including the Colts, is rushing upside, it ain't that kind of league anymore, friends. And he's got to be able to throw the football. So there's a lot of dynasty relevance here. And oh yeah, they've also got a rookie, Riley Leonard, that we'll be keeping an eye on too in super flex leagues. Even if the dude wins a backup role, he's relevant from a super flex standpoint. So there's a lot to learn here.
And Chris, let's address your Josh Allen thing here for a second, bud, because you're way off here. Yes, he had a slow start to that season for like the first 6 games. Josh Allen, his rookie season from week 12 to 17 was the QB1 overall.
It's his first 12 games. I didn't say for the whole season. His first 12 games.
He played 6 games, got hurt, came back for the last 6. And he was QB1 those last 6, 7 games. Like there was significant progression within his rookie season. There's been no progression with Anthony Richardson, period.
Anthony
whatsoever.
Richardson played three games.
And Richardson's numbers are even less efficient as a passer than Josh Allen in his rookie year. I'm sorry, it's not an equivalent argument. People want to keep making that equivalent argument. It's not an equivalent argument between the two. It's not.
I mean, in fairness there, though, like the fantasy production, the rookie season for Josh Allen was purely rushing. He was a horrible passer. Richardson was worse. We're not disagreeing there.
But what did Richardson give? Richardson couldn't even give you the rushing stats you were looking for as a starter last season. He did the first 3 games his rookie year, didn't even bother to run in the second year, and was still a terrible passer. With Allen, you know what you're getting from a fantasy perspective. I don't need you to be a great passer if you're going to rush at a prolific level. Anthony Richardson, for being as big and as athletic as he is, doesn't rush at a prolific level. At least didn't last year.
Yeah.
They didn't run him last year.
It wasn't all designed for Allen either. You're supposed to be this scrambler. You got to scramble. You got to do those things. If you're not going to give me, don't tell me what they didn't run him with. It was what you actually produce on the field. If you're not going to run Anthony Richardson, then how is he fantasy relevant to me?
This is the coaching staff took Jonathan Taylor out in the fourth quarter. I mean, I don't know how I'm supposed to try to sit there and defend and say that it doesn't matter what they did and how they utilized him. It does definitely matter how they utilized him. And the completion percentage thing, like I said, look at Josh Allen for his first 12 games. My whole point for Anthony Richardson is real simple. He's young. He's super young still. And he didn't have a lot of college starts. And he doesn't have a lot of NFL starts. And for guys giving other chances, how long do I have to hear about Trey Lance still being relevant? How you can trade the Vikings, you can trade the Cowboys, you can trade here. Still every year, despite what he did, how much time the 49ers didn't work utilizing him, Trey Lance was still this hidden value somehow people would still want to try to get their hands on.
No. You're getting media narrative confused with reality. Did he ever actually get another opportunity?
The media narrative impacts dynasty football and fantasy football a lot. So that's where I do think it correlates. People get hyped up about players that they liked. If there's certain things that there are certain matchups or places or coach staff that they can wind up being with, then they might get excited. Anthony Richardson, to me, is a guy that all of a sudden, when he's on the Rams next year, then Sean McVay is working with them. Are we going to sit there like, Anthony Richardson, we don't care fantasy-wise, dynasty-wise, who cares? Okay, we'll see.
In the same number of career games, Dorian Thompson-Robinson has a better completion percentage than Anthony Richardson.
Well, I want to make something else clear on Richardson. When I say I don't care, because if he's not going to run his own and the coaching staff's not going to design him to run, he's useless fantasy-wise. That's my point. Like, it's irrelevant for fantasy. If you're not going to utilize it.
Joe Milton doesn't run, and he's 25 years old, and people are still looking at him as a possible dynasty option flex. I'm just saying just how it works in reality, Dan. I'm not with you. Like, I'm not saying people are going to be always wrong about Anthony Richardson or right about him. I'm just saying that how people react to things, if you have a certain skill set, you get a lot of lives, especially if you're a quarterback and you're young.
Joe Milton and Anthony Richardson, between the two, I actually still kind of maybe want Anthony Richardson on my roster because I think he might actually score some points this year. Joe Milton's not getting anywhere near the
People
field.
were excited about Spencer Rattler last year. I mean, all right. Well, go ahead.
Are they still excited about Spencer Rattler?
Some are. The Spencer Rattler lovers are.
Not since Tyler Shuck, who's twice his height, showed up in
town. If you
town.
have a sane thought in your head, you are no longer excited about Spencer Rattler.
If Spencer Rattler wants to be a starting quarterback for week 1, let's hear what Dynasty World, how fantasy reacts to that.
If he ends up being the starting quarterback week 1, offload him immediately. And I'll say the same thing about Richardson. I would offload Richardson. If he wins this job, I'll try and talk somebody to give me something for him.
Richardson might be worth keeping, but he's worth keeping as a hope and pray, not as a guy you're ever going to expect to play.
Which is why I would rather get out from underneath him and not have to worry and hope and pray for the next 4 years that he might do something. I don't know. If he does anything, if he shows up week 1, toss him off to somebody
younger than most of the guys coming out of college anyway.
Well,
all right.
Most of the guys coming out of college have passed more than Anthony Richardson did and can pass more.
Look, I killed him. He should have never took him that early as they did, but I also think that we're writing off a guy that people got pissed off at last year, and now all of a sudden he just sucks in everybody's eyes. And it was like he didn't really change. He was the same guy going when he got drafted at 4.
If he was a wide receiver, it wouldn't be a big deal. He's a quarterback. He has to.
Chris, here's where I'll agree with you and where I think the show is different. Because we were never on Anthony Richardson because we knew what he was from day one. Okay, maybe Adam was a little bit hopeful as a Colts fan that he'd wind up being wrong, but I think in Adam's heart, he knew what Anthony Richardson was day one too.
I believed in it as a gamble, not as a low.
I was hoping against hope.
Day one, if you rewind it back to when he got drafted, it either works and it's great, or it's horrible and you have an early pick and you can draft high again, and that's
so.
better.
So real quick to that point. I, on our show, warned everybody as he would be a draft bust. Don't think Anthony Richardson, everybody was taking him ADP last year.
That's fair. That's fair.
But after 4 games, and he was just as injured, playing 4 games the season before with 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, same completion percentage stuff, all the same issues. If I had him in Dynasty last year going into the season, what could I have sold him for? And what could I have gotten for Anthony Richardson? How valuable was he? Look at Bo Nix, for example, going into this year. So that's where I realized, like I said, that's where people are quick to write off stuff real quick. I still think the value might have been too high, but he's one of the guys that in this whole equation, I think has the best chance of kind of still being okay down the road versus you could see something like a Pierce or Mitchell. Mitchell could be a bust. If Mitchell doesn't do anything this year, what happens to the rhetoric around Mitchell moving forward? Pierce is the last year of his deal. He could be moving on. If he doesn't produce for the Colts, and bye-bye. Pittman is getting close to where they can move on for him in his contract. So that's where I see a lot of the guys matter in a sense. But I mean, we're going to see that battle in OTA play out. I think that's what we're kind of talking about for this show. Like, OTA-wise, we're not going to figure out a lot of this stuff even with the battles to a point. And that's where I don't think some of the narratives that Adam was kind of pointing to is it narratives we care about right now, or is it narratives we're kind of still, looking forward to the season, see how it unfolds?
Well, this is dynasty relevancy, so it's OTA battles that are coming up and what that means possibly for the long term. I think that's kind of how we're approaching it. We're giving you different perspectives from this too to kind of get an idea. Do I think Rich has a skill set to maybe pop at some point? Potentially. But I also want to make the point, especially when you brought up Josh Allen, there's nobody to compare him to with how inefficient he is as a passer, that he actually has some sort of pathway to regain that status. I think that's more the thing that I'm getting to. He's not even on Josh Allen's level of what we saw on Josh Allen early in his career.
Where I feel like I see him, and this is where I kind of understand you're saying. Like I said, I point out the college starts. He reminds me of where still Jalen Hurts early in Alabama, become 25, 26 years old, where we see Jalen Hurts finally leaves Oklahoma, and then he becomes more of a quarterback. It still took him a year or two in the NFL to become a decent quarterback as well, and his accuracy to kind of work with that. But that's still 3 to 4 more years that Anthony Richardson kind of matured into his skill set in a sense. That's my point.
I would say a lot of Jalen Hurts' development came in college, but then came in the league. Anthony Richardson didn't have enough time in either yet to actually be able to develop. And I think at this point, you're at the top level. There's no way to slow the game down for him. There's no way to have that. You can't get back experience that the guy doesn't have, and he's already at the top level. It's hard to shoehorn things into at this level.
Chase, just speaking of the awareness factor, again, Jalen Hurts, and I kind of mentioned with Justin Fields, more aware in situations, even in his rookie year, than Richardson was, and that's why NFL coaches trust him. That's why he gets the longer leash. I do think we're going to have to wind up ending it there, though, because we're cutting along on time. Next week, though, we start to transition into 2025. So make sure you come back to Operation Domination next week on your favorite podcast app and, of course, on the Fantasy Football Advice YouTube channel at FFAdvice.net. I'm Dan from Chase and Adam and Chris. We're going to see you guys next week.